Hey everyone, this is Adam Ellenboss from Nightlight Astrology. Today, we are going to revisit our recent solar eclipse in the sign of Virgo by taking a look at the third decan of the sign of Virgo. If you're not familiar with the decans, I'll be telling you more about what they are. And in particular, we're going to be looking at this third and final decan and its meaning and symbolism as a way of continuing to work with and understand the eclipse that we are really still in the midst of. Anytime that you're in a moon cycle that started with an eclipse, you're still in that eclipse window. Not only that, but for several lunar cycles that come right after an eclipse, you're typically still in the eclipse window. So it's still a very good time to be thinking about this recent solar eclipse. And as I'm preparing my 2026 master classes, which are on the decans, I thought it might be a nice time to tell you a little bit about what they are and use them as a way of deepening our connection to this recent eclipse. So that's our agenda for today. Before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. Drop us a comment. Helps the algorithm find us. When you click the notification bell, you know that we have a new episode dropping. All of these things really help us meet our goals as a community and channel. We're seeing if we can get to 100,000 subscribers on the channel by next summer. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, which is nightlightastrology.com. Head over to the website. Don't forget that if you want to come study astrology with us next June in Mexico, the early bird rate for our retreat is about to be finished. You have about another week or two here to take advantage of the early bird rate for our Oracle Within training program in Mexico next June. I think we have about 20 some spots left, so I hope to see you there. Also, the main thing that I'm promoting today and between now and November is the return of our first year course, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. Our first year program in Hellenistic natal astrology begins again in November. At the end of today's talk, there is a video that explains everything the program includes, what makes this program really unique. To me, this is the best thing that I've ever created as a content creator. The courses that I teach and lead year round for going on 16 years right now really are the peak of my creative work as an astrologer. It's what I'm best at, and I think you'll really enjoy learning in our community. So everything that you need to know, again, will be tagged on at the end of today's content. There are early bird rates available right now until October 24th. You can take advantage of those to save on the cost of our programs, or use the need-based tuition assistance, which will allow you to pick within a sliding scale a tuition number that works for you. That is to make sure that nobody's priced out of studying a sacred topic like astrology, because we understand people are coming from different realities financially, and if you're hurting or the exchange rate is high or you're on a fixed or limited income, you're between jobs or only working part-time, whatever the case may be, please do take advantage of that. Come study with us. Okay, well, let's take a look at the real-time clock and refresh ourselves on the eclipse that happened recently. So here we are on Friday, and well, you can't see that right now. It's Friday, September 26th as you're listening to this. But if we go back to Sunday, September 21st, just 5 days ago or so, we had a solar eclipse in the sign of Virgo. Now, we talked at length on the channel about that eclipse. And if you missed the episodes where I unpack it or give some horoscopes for it, still really worth taking a look at that content if you missed it. Because like I said, we're still in the midst of an eclipse moon cycle. It is something that plays out not just for a day, but for several months to come. In fact, for usually a whole year and a half of recurring eclipses in the same signs. The same whole sign house will be active. And those cycles of change have long 9, 18-year historic patterns behind them as well. So worth looking at if you haven't yet. But anyway, you'll notice that this eclipse formed at the very end of the sign of Virgo. Right now, I'm in the midst of preparing my curriculum for my yearly masterclass series, which is basically a series that I do for intermediate students of astrology who are enrolled in my programs, who may be interested in topics that go slightly outside of the scope of our main programs. There are so many topics in astrology, we can't cover all of them in the depth and detail that they deserve. So every year I run a masterclass to cover things that may be outside the scope of our core curriculum. In 2026, I will be giving my first class on the decans. What are they, you ask? The decans are, you could think of them as a kind of dignity category, the way that we think of planets in their exaltation or their rulership, their bound, their triplicity. The decan is a form of planetary rulership that takes place throughout 10-degree divisions of the zodiac. So there's 36 decans overall for the 360 degrees of the zodiac. Each planet rules 10 degrees of a sign. So you have the first 10 degrees of any sign of the zodiac, the second 10 degrees, and the third 10 degrees, every sign being 30 degrees. You get 3 decans per sign with a planet that is considered to be the ruler of those 10 degrees. Now, the decans come from a pre-existing form of, let's call it, ritual planetary magic that actually comes prior to the advent of Hellenistic astrology, has its roots in Egypt. Egyptian mysticism and Decanic magic is a very old thing, but it becomes a part of Hellenistic astrology and horoscopic astrology. And there are several different forms of competing planetary rulerships for the decans. I'm going to be working with the Chaldean order in the masterclass series that I teach. But either way, what becomes really interesting about these decans is that as time goes on, the decans become associated with almost like magical images. So if you are familiar with the Sabian symbols, for example, or even those sacred images that I sometimes use in horoscopes, there were also something like alchemical, magical, incantational images that were associated with the decans. Not just one image, but different images coming from different lines of magic, let's call it. So when you study the decans, what you're studying is a swath of degrees in a sign, and how that degree, that section of degrees, is sort of telling a story from the first 10 degrees to the second 10 degrees to the third 10 degrees, with different planets ruling each set of 10 degrees and with different sort of magical images associated with them. This is really old too. And so is there historical precedent for something like the Sabian symbols? Yeah, they're the decans. That's a simple way of thinking about it that I hope is helpful. There are 2 books that I want to refer you to in case you've never read something on the decans and you want to dig deeper. Come take the masterclass that'll be on sale through the Kickstarter, obviously, at the end of the year, and you'll learn all about the decans and the Nightlight community. I hope you'll do that. But there are a couple of good sources. This is 36 Spaces written by Austin Coppock on the decans. I think this might be out of print, but certainly Austin is someone who is he's very familiar with them and a good resource. The other one would be T. Susan Chang, who has been a guest teacher at Nightlight. She wrote a book called 36 Secrets, a Decanic Journey Through the Minor Arcana of the Tarot. So as the tradition goes on, the decans become associated with different tarot cards, as well as the magical images and the ruling planets. To me, that is just really, really fascinating. And so the masterclass that I'm teaching in the new year, for example, will have an element of that masterclass that is devoted to explaining the correlation between certain tarot cards and the decans and the planet and the magical images associated. I'll also be doing some associating of I Ching hexagrams. So it's going to be a really fun series that will give you a way of working with the decans. Today, what I want to do is give you a little sample of what this masterclass series will look like by reflecting on the recent solar eclipse in the 3rd decan of Virgo. I have 5 things to watch for given the placement of the eclipse in that 3rd and final decan of Virgo. What I want to do today is I want to read you a brief excerpt from Austin Coppock's wonderful book. That's really one of my favorite books, just so you can get a feel for it and kind of get exposed to one of the experts on the subject. And again, I also hope you'll check out his work. He's a regular on the Astrology podcast. So here's what he says. The image that is associated with this 3rd decan of Virgo is the sarcophagus. The last decan of Virgo shows the fate of all matter. Now we're talking now about an earth sign, right? So the end of an earth sign, he's relating to the end of all matter. The fate of all matter to be brought to perfection and then crumble to dust. For there is naught created which is invulnerable to the ever-shifting tides of generation and corruption. The spirit gazes upon its inevitable separation from matter here, contemplating the consequences of its brief union. Remember that Virgo is a sign whose very final degrees take us into the fall equinox, into the underworld of the solar year. And so these last degrees are an anticipation of entering the earthly plane of mortality or death, the entrance into the underworld that takes place here. And I love the way Austin puts this. Many of the images associated with this face picture the forces of decay. Ibn Ezra describes a white woman praying to God, but the very hands she prays with are leprous. The link between the material and spiritual forces, the hands which pray, are beginning to decay, promising the connection's inevitable termination. Meanwhile, the Latin Picatrix describes it as a face of weakness, old age, illness, sloth, the injury of limbs, and the destruction of other people. It pictures a, quote, pale man of large body wrapped in a white linen cloth, suggesting a burial shroud or the process of mummification. Mummification is pictured directly in the Liber Hermetis, which says of this Decan, quote, it's like a mummy, its whole body is like one who is buried. Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy continue the jolly theme, picturing, quote, a white woman and deaf or an old man leaning on a staff. These images are described as signifying weakness, infirmity, loss of members, destruction of trees, depopulation of lands. Indeed, time and space are diseases for which there is only one cure. So you can see that the end of the earth sign that comes at the end of the light half of the year, ushering us into darkness, is being associated with things that fall apart. This is one very powerful element of this third and final decan of Virgo, and that's just a little sample from Austin. I want to read you just a tiny little sample from T. Susan Chang, and also highly recommend you pick up her book, Good Astrologer, seemingly even better person. So let me pick up here. So in her book, she spends a good amount of time explaining the association between 3 tarot cards and this decan. This last decan of Virgo is ruled by Mercury. And not only is it ruled by Mercury, but it then shares domicile and exaltation rulership in the last 10 degrees. So the last 10 degrees of Virgo, the decan is ruled by Mercury, the sign is ruled by Mercury, and it's also exalted in Mercury is in Virgo. And so this becomes a very powerful 10 degrees of Hermes. She associates the magician, the hermit, and the 10 of Pentacles. And historically, some of those cards are associated with the last decan of Virgo as well. With the final card of Virgo, we come to the end of the story of Earth. The suit of Pentacles talks to us about bodies, things, money. It's the story of the life of matter. Earth's elemental major is the world, appropriately enough. Within the rounded confines of its wreath, we are born, we live, we die, and then we begin again. Stories of the world are stories of redemption and return. They are stories of our existence in the finite fields of time, and the language of market. The market informs the way we talk about that existence. We spend our lives doing something. We save lives. Our lives have value. We built a livelihood. We sought our purpose. We fashion an inheritance for our successors. Whatever we first conceived, we have now brought to earth and made real, as above, so below. The magician, avatar of Mercury, ruler of Virgo, shows us it is so. So here she's talking about the perfection of something through the magician and the hermit, the careful, long cultivation of crafts, resources, skills, abilities, knowledge, intellect, taking those things and transforming them into something earthy, substantive, useful, practical, and building something from it in the material realm. Now we're at a threshold where the passing of that on through the portal of death in legacies and inheritances, or passing on a tradition, passing on knowledge through schools and lineages, successors that come after us and carry on the wisdom we pass down as teachers. This is the kind of thing that she is associating with the final decan of Virgo, being a place of the 10 of Pentacles, a kind of culmination of accomplishment. Let me actually show you an image of the 10 of Pentacles so you can see it, because it's pretty cool to see. Let's see if I can bring it up here. Okay, here it is. So this is just briefly the 10 of Pentacles. So there you can see there's an old man sitting in a chair. There's 10 pentacles. This is the final card of the suit of Pentacles. And there's a sense of what you've built over a lifetime. This is kind of like an old patriarch, you know, who's built something and is passing it on, and the children in the family are enjoying the fruits of a labor. Take away the patriarchal imagery of the Rider-Waite if it doesn't resonate. The idea being, what have you built? What legacy are you now ready to pass on? Or what has reached a process of culmination and completion in terms of things that you've built with your own hands, learned with your own mind, developed and cultivated, crafted through skill and time and effort. So I love that although there's a kind of sarcophagus imagery, heading into the underworld, things that fall apart, things that decay, things that die materially and have to be let go of, it's also, what have you perfected? What have you completed as far as you could in terms of the material world? There will be a point in time where, I die and the development of my skill as an astrologer will be over. It just won't continue unless I do it in another lifetime, or I'll retire. And I hope to anyway. We'll see. But if I, retire, then that will be the end of continuing to develop and cultivate something. And all I'll have left is what I've passed on to students, their students, my kids, and whatever interest they take in astrology, maybe. This is what the third and final decan of Virgo is pointing to. This is a little section she has called Roads of No Return. Implicit in these stories of creation is the death of the creator. The Hermit is a mercurial guide to the underworld, safely conducting the sun's light through darkness to rise again. Welcome to the realm of the psychopomp, but our chthonic guide is a god of interpretation and translation, a trickster and a fence. Although he may safeguard the light as it travels through its netherworld, we can't expect it to emerge unaltered. Hermes, famous friend to man, takes our ghostly hand as we leave this world, conducting us on a one-way journey. Like the sun, we surely rise again, but never as we were before. Chthonic Hermes is said to live by Coctus, the river of lamentation. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. On the road of necessity from which none may return, the only way out is through. The Decan imagery teems with death signifiers, pale figures wrapped in shroud-like white linens. Commentators agree that the face indicates weakness, illness, age, debility, destruction, even the loss of members. We can think of the light in the hermit's lantern as the light of a human soul. As the hermit tenders that light into the care of its underworld guardians, the body falls lifeless. It's no coincidence that Virgo 3 is the first shadow decan of the Queen of Swords, she who is so well known for separation, divorce, and widowhood. Graceful though she is, and attuned to the airy music of Venus, her sovereignty and power begin with the dance of death. In the Northern Hemisphere, Virgo 3 sees the sunlit day diminish till it's equal with the night. The days are just long enough to bring in the harvest from the last fading crops and store it for the cool weather ahead, or collect its seeds for spring. What I love there is she talks about death, but she also talks about the death moment of harvest as a culminating moment of gathering and reaping what's been sown. So there are really two ways of looking at the end of Virgo. One is about the inevitable collapse and diminishment of material things that is part of the cycle of life and death in the material world itself. The other one is about the harvest. What have you built? What have you made? What will you pass on after death that comes from your own skill? And I love that she uses the images of the Hermit and of the Magician. Let me show you the Hermit card. Famously, by the way, we often think of the Hermit as a kind of, what do you call it? Like the Led Zeppelin album cover, So let me show you. In case you've never seen it before, I'm sure most of you have, but there's the Hermit from Rider-Waite. I believe that's from Rider-Waite. It's maybe some version of the Rider-Waite, but so a psychopomp bringing us into the underworld. And the Hermit also represents those things that over long passages of time have developed. Like the Hermit is a wise old figure, a wise old magician, the one who's honed their craft over a long period of time. So with all of this in mind from the third decan of Virgo, we can now consider the eclipse, the whole sign house it's in. The topics may be active right now in our birth charts in terms of these 5 things. Number 1 is burials. What is reaching a place of conclusion? What is coming to an end materially? What is being diminished or let go of materially? It's a very appropriate thing to be thinking about for the very final degrees of the last earth sign of the light half of the year. So just metaphorical burials. What are we putting back into the earth? What are we releasing? And a burial is also about what's being passed on through the ancestors, through the dead. What gifts do they carry with them into the ground? Most burial traditions include giving with the soul some valuable things that they carry with them into the afterlife, or that are symbols of what they left behind, although they will still carry emblems of what they left behind with them in their actual burial. Number 2 would be legacies and preservation. How do I continue on with something after the death, after something has finished? How do I keep something going beyond moments of closure or resolution? Can become an interesting consideration for an eclipse happening at the very last degrees of an earth sign that comes right before the entrance into the underworld. Legacies and preservation, the concern with not just what I've built, but how to pass it on, how to make it continue on beyond a threshold of some kind. So a great question for this, like a simple example of something that would be perfect for the last degree of Virgo. I'm hobby bodybuilder, just a fun thing that I like to do for myself. But I have some ambition to compete in an amateur show just for fun, not to place, not to win, just to say I did it. It's kind of a dream of mine. We'll see if it happens or not. I don't know. But one thing that I know that is quite common is that when people who are not professionals do a marathon or they do a bodybuilding show and you've crossed that threshold, the question often becomes, what role will this lifestyle play after I've run the race? Will, I keep running? How will I keep this as an active part of my lifestyle beyond the meeting of the goal or the harvesting of the work and the reaping of the benefit? I ran that marathon. Well, you gained a lot of health and a lot of inner good feelings from having a daily practice of running. Surely there's a way of keeping that around, even if it won't be in the same way prepping for a marathon. You see what I'm saying? So there's a way of asking, how do I continue with something after or beyond a threshold of change that demarcates the end of one process and the beginning of another? Number 3, purification and mortality. When we think about Virgo in general, we think a lot about the process of purification and forgiveness and acceptance. We're all going to have stains and imperfections. This sign has so much to do with getting better and eliminating stains. It's like Virgo is like the best stain remover that we have in the cupboard astrologically. But it is also a sign that frequently asks us to accept and live with faults and imperfections. You got a little tomato sauce on your chin. No big deal. It's life. Dealing with the need to get better, the need to be clean, the need to be pure, the need to purify, the need to heal, and the inevitable decay. That juxtaposition is especially poignant in the final degrees of Virgo, which is why so many of the images of this decan have to do with things like praying hands that are leprous. Number 4, Hermes thresholds. What kind of transition is Hermes bringing us through right now? This is a simple way of thinking about the fact that Hermes ruled sign that comes at the end of summer, taking us into the underworld, is an eclipse happening there in this third decan ruled by Hermes, associated with the magician, the hermit. What kind of hermetic process does Mercury want to usher us into from one world into another? So I really look for the presence of Hermes right now in this eclipse. And then finally, the question of enough. How much is enough? The idea behind the decan, the last decan of Virgo, that's very obvious is the harvesting. But there might be, because of the emphasis that Virgo has on death and the underworld, like you can't take it all with you. Even the pharaohs can't take everything into their tombs, and they probably have the biggest, they probably get the most supplies. But this last decan does talk about the process of becoming simpler and letting go. It's like, how do you Marie Kondo your soul? How much is enough? And material accumulation versus simplicity is something that comes about in these final degrees of Virgo as the last sign of summer is yielding to the darkness, the death, the letting go. How much is enough knowledge? How much is enough skill or ability? How much money or learning? How many degrees do I need? There is an opportunity for perhaps for a sense of excessiveness to be cut back. and what it means to have done enough and to call it good. Retirement comes to mind. When can you just say, okay, I did enough? I find that many people really struggle with that. So the last decan of Virgo can be about, because it's so close to the harvest symbolism, it can be about letting go of something materially and letting it be enough. Okay. So you can see, I hope, from this exercise how magical and beautiful it is to work with the decans. They add a layer of storytelling and nuance to an astrological interpretation that's lovely. I think if you overuse any tool in astrology, it can become redundant and lose its power, and it can lose its specialness. But I think with certain events like eclipses, or playing with new moons or full moons sometimes, or major transits in your birth chart, including a layer of decanic imagery and symbolism, it can be just like really wonderful adornment that helps us get just a little bit deeper access to the themes and symbols. So anyway, stick around, because next, after I sign off, I'm going to tell you about the upcoming Year 1 course, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. This is the best thing I've created, you guys. If you want to study astrology in a really deep, meaningful way, get down to those philosophical roots and go, why? Where does this all come from? What is astrology? What kind of knowledge can we say that it provides us with? And what isn't astrology? And also, how do we practice this with skill and craft and technique and intellectual understanding, but pair it with artistic, intuitive understanding? How do we make this psychological, but also predictive? These are the kinds of things that we look at with this program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. Can't wait for a new program starting. This is our 31st program in 16 years. I can't wait to see you there. It's a very good time to be studying astrology over the course of the next year, with Uranus and Pluto trining in air signs. Really nice combination for studying a celestial divinatory language. So anyway, that's it. Stick around and to hear more about it next, and we will see you again Monday. Bye, everyone. Hey, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. I'm excited to tell you about our upcoming program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. This is our first-year course in Hellenistic astrology, and it begins again this November. In this video, I'm going to tell you about the course, the format of the course, and how to register. So let's go ahead and get into it. What is this course about? Well, if you are not familiar, ancient Hellenistic astrology is the earliest and original form of horoscopic astrology. All of the subsequent forms and schools of astrology that have existed over thousands of years come from these philosophical and theoretical roots. And so what you're doing when you study Hellenistic astrology is you're going back to understand the why behind absolutely everything. Why were there ever such a thing as houses and signs in the first place? How were the planets ever assigned to rule various portions of the zodiac in the first place? How do you use the categories of essential dignity, and why were they ever created in the first place? If you're someone like me, you like to know the why behind things, because once you understand the why, then you know how to use things more intuitively. So really the point of Hellenistic astrology, in my opinion, is not so much about going back and becoming a traditional astrologer, or just being traditional for the sake of being traditional, as much as it is about grasping the roots of the entire system and paradigm. When you understand those roots, you have more intuition and understanding, which allow for you to be much more artful and fluid in the way that you speak the language of astrology. We call this class Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic because while it is about going back to understand the philosophical, theoretical, technical roots of the tradition, it's also about fluidly bridging those things with modern astrology and all of its most unique contributions. For example, modern astrology has given us so much psychological depth and personal depth. And so in a modern astrological setting, you're going to get the ability to explore your own character, your own psychology, and you're going to be able to utilize astrology for a process of healing and personal transformation. But when you pair that with ancient astrology, and it's almost like predictive karmic analytics, you really have a full toolkit to work with. And so that's also a great mission of ours at Nightlight, is to bridge ancient and modern forms, which is why we call the program Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. So that's just a little kind of overview of the program. If you want to know more about the specifics of the curriculum and of the syllabus, what I encourage you to do is go over to nightlightastrology.com, click on the courses page, go to the first year course, scroll down, and you'll see this over 12 months you'll learn about. And here you're going to see more of a detailed breakdown of the curriculum itself. I can promise you that if you've studied astrology in modern context, but you've never gone back to the ancient roots, while some of these topics may look familiar to you and you go, oh, I've already learned about that, unless you've studied them from the Hellenistic perspective, I guarantee that you are not going to be familiar with this content. Hellenistic astrology is mind-blowingly new and interesting for most people. And if you've never studied it, again, don't assume that anything on this list is something you're going to be familiar with. In that way, the program is really ideal for a variety of different people, and I'll say more about that in a second. So what is the format of the course? Let's go to that next. Scroll down and you're going to see that the course includes 30 online webinars that I lead throughout the year. Over the course of a year together, I have 30 classes that are broken into different units of material. In between those classes, we have breakout study sessions with your course director and 2 TAs. They're going to lead you through Q&A sessions and tutoring sessions to make sure that you have a lot of support in between major units of study. In addition, we also have an interactive group forum discussion where you can ask questions year-round and get an answer within a business day in the student forum, where a lot of people also connect and build community. Lots of people in that forum also develop like little meetup groups outside of class. That's very common in all of our programs. It's a very community-loving, warm space where anyone's also welcome. Throughout the course, you're also going to find that for every lesson, if you're just there as a hobby student, you can just listen to the webinars. They're all recorded for you. So if you can't make the live webinars, everything is housed on the website as recordings. I'd say about 40 or 50% of our students are going to be following along at their own pace, whereas the other half might be attending the live webinars. But it's really kind of, you know, if you can attend a few and then one week you got to be gone, the recordings are always there. You have lifetime access to everything in the course, so it's not a big deal. For every lesson as well, if you're someone who wants to go really, really deep, maybe you have the intention to practice professionally, this course is set up with an optional certification exam at the end from our school, from our program. So you can, you know, if you want to build that resume and develop the credentials from our programs, you can do that, but you also, it's optional, so you don't have to. And outside of every lesson, we have recommended reading. We have supplemental bonus content, all of which is optional, but it's there for people who might want a lot more, whereas some people will take the webinars themselves, and that'll be plenty. So it's really flexible in that way. Also, this is one program within 4 years of curriculum that are meant to go together. And so most people who come through our first year program will end up taking our second year program, where we develop forecasting and prediction and transit tracking techniques. Our third year program, which is aimed at counseling and psychology. So psychological counseling skills is our third year program. And then the Oracle Within, which is our exploration of the philosophical, spiritual roots of the divinatory oracular tradition of astrology. So there's a lot of material there. We also have another 1-year program in horary astrology for some people who want to add that predictive tool to their toolkit. So there's just a lot of material at Nightlight that this class is actually just one part of, which can be taken standalone, or for some people, they get into it, they're going to love it. You're going to hang out with us for 3 or 4 years worth of content. This program is ideal for a number of different types of students of astrology. I'll say that for starters. So let's see here. I'll stop sharing this. So we have there's a profile of the typical students who come through our courses. One is going to be people who just want a very guided introduction to ancient astrology because you've never had it before. Maybe you're only familiar with modern, and you want that guided, structured approach to learning traditional for the first time. Also, people who are brand new to astrology in general, there's no better place to start than at the roots of the ancient foundations. So whether you're a total beginner or just a beginner to Hellenistic, this is a great place to start. If you are someone who's been around astrology for a long time, but you've never had a guided, structured approach to Hellenistic astrology, again, this is a great place to start. I promise you, Hellenistic is very different than what you're familiar with, and you're going to need a guided and structured approach at some point in time. I also think for people who are looking for a lineage, which means not just a bunch of information, but a practitioner-specific based approach where you get to see a practitioner work with clients. You get to hear how a practitioner has prioritized different techniques and why. You're going to get a structured, spiritually grounded focus at Nightlight as well, where if you're looking for someone who practices astrology, but also values grounded everyday spiritual practice, that's Nightlight. If you want a community that's been in the industry for a long time now, this is our 16th year of teaching programs and guiding students through trainings. So all of those things, if they matter to you, this is a great place to study. It's a warm community atmosphere. It's spiritually grounded. It's focused. It's academically rigorous. It's going to provide you the appropriate preparation for practicing professionally, especially if you go through all of our programs. But also for those who are just curious and love astrology for your own personal interests, this is going to be a great place for you to learn and grow and thrive and feel like you have a lot of support around you in the curriculum, the teachers, the community, as you're developing, what might just be a personal interest or spiritual hobby. So that is who it's ideal for. Finally, how you register. You go over to the website. I'm going to take you back there. And it's at the bottom of the first year page. You're going to find that the early bird rate is in effect until October 24th. You can save significantly off the cost of the course when you use the early bird rate, where you can pay in full, or use an early bird installment rate plan. Both are going to save you off significantly off the cost of the course. But also at Nightlight, it has always been our mission to make sure that astrological education is accessible for everyone. So please, if you are someone who would love to take this course, but maybe you can only afford a small amount of tuition per month, use the tuition assistance. It is there. All you got to do is plot, you fill out the little form, you tell us your situation. If you're on a fixed income, if you're on a limited income, if you're part-time, if you're in between jobs, if you don't make a lot and you're on that fixed budget, we understand. We don't want people to hurt themselves trying to study something that is spiritual that we feel should be very accessible for everybody. So if you're someone who could use a little help to make this program happen, for whatever reason, maybe you're a single parent or you're on disability or you're retired or you're on a fixed income, whatever the case is, use that tuition assistance. Also, people in other countries who have extreme, exchange rates. We get it. So just use the tuition assistance and we'll be glad to make sure that the price point is accessible. For us, as a spiritual topic, we're a business at the end of the day, but we believe that this is a spiritual topic. And so accessibility has been a part of our model for 16 years now. We've never not had one of our training programs with affordable sliding scale-based prices for people who need it. So please take advantage of that. It's all there for you. I hope to see you in classes soon. And if you have any questions about the program whatsoever, direct them to us at info@nightlightastrology.com. And I hope to see you all coming up here in November. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.